Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another day of flexible philosophy.
Very exciting topic for today, which is a surprise for me.
Yes, I told Aleesa I had a topic, and she's going to walk into something she doesn't even
Okay.
know. Okay, here's my topic, Aleesa. This might interest some of you listeners. I want to talk about what it is like recovering from moral injury, which I will define quickly. Moral injury is when you've been participating like in a group of people and you thought you were helping people, but you were actually causing harm.
Yes.
Would you say that's what it is?
Yeah, you see it a lot with combat veterans of kind of like I was following orders, and then they get back home and they're like, I can't believe I did that, but I was following orders. It was for this higher purpose of fighting for my country, but at the same time these people got affected and like you see it in that way, like speaking with veterans and stuff like that,
Great.
like moral injury.
That's a good extreme example, like killing people. My like religious example is proselytizing people, like sharing, like pressuring them into religious like conversion so that they didn't go to hell. And then like looking back now, I'm like, ooh, that was not helpful at all. Like I brought a lot of friends from my high school into my youth group because I thought I was helping recruit them. And now I'm like, I regret that, like I regret the way that I treated them with hindsight.
I have some cringe examples that might be for another day, but a sneak peek involves forgiveness. And someone's telling you this like bad thing that happened, and then you're kind of like pushing them to forgive the person that did that. And it's like that's
Yes.
the only path. That's the only solution. You have to forgive because the Bible says this. And it's like you're hijacking their psychological process and stuff. And like nowadays I'm like that is such a bad piece of advice to give someone who's grieving or who was recently abused or anything like that. Uh, yeah.
Yep.
So that's when years later I'm like, oh, I caused harm, even though I thought I was like, bringing down this higher
Yeah.
message. It's like
I
not
know.
recommended.
It's like giving bad, like in that context, it's giving bad advice with absolute certainty.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that defines
Terrible
that
way.
defines years of my
It's
life.
also being it's also being young and thinking you can never be wrong about anything, and you're just telling it like I'm sure that this is the truth, and you're like, oh, that's not gonna age well.
Like the dogs not going to heaven thing is not aging well for
Yep,
me.
it's it's not aging well.
Anyways,
Okay,
yeah.
so here's the prompt to you. So lots of people have experienced, first of all, lots of people have experienced giving bad advice and thinking they were right. That's part of growing up. But also religion and all that comes in, there's a lot there. But it's unique in the people who experience that and then catapult themselves into a therapy career.
Okay, how dare you for
Let's talk
calling me
about
out?
that.
What?
Listen, though, I know that there are other therapists who have moral injury from religion that this will apply
Okay.
to.
I'm gonna just like turn my camera off. Okay. Am I turning red?
Wait, wait,
I think I'm turning
have I activated your nervous system?
I'm turning red right
Hold
now
on.
if you're not watching the camera. Okay.
This might be too much. You might need therapy for that. Wait, are you okay talking
Yeah,
about
it's fine.
this? For
Yeah,
real?
keep that in.
It's kind of activating.
Okay.
Hold on. Take a little bit of my I survived cancer, nothing really matters, we're all alive. Take a little bit of grounding
All
from
right.
me.
Yeah.
I am I am like exponentially less concerned about getting in trouble or the ways that I messed up than I have ever been because I've like literally looked at like none of it mattered
Okay.
in the
All right.
we're all just
Yeah.
trying
All
here.
right.
Okay.
Let's see. Let's see.
So, for any people who have experienced moral injury and then find themselves back in the role of somebody who's often, not that we give advice in therapy, but we're still like
Guiding.
utilizing kind of like a social construct of therapy and all of the mental health teachings and trainings to help people who like come to get support,
Yeah.
right?
Like I always
There's some
I
overlap.
tell a lot of people if you're looking for discipleship, this is not it. Like I make a very
Yeah.
conscious effort to operate under the role as a licensed professional counselor and not as like a mentor, like a spiritual mentor or someone in a discipleship role or something like that. Because it can look similar. Or when I went to my first counselor,
Hmm.
I was looking for discipleship, you know? And so I make it
Hmm.
very clear what counseling is and what my role is in it too. So,
If you want to reframe this from the response you just had, like I also think it's possible that people who've experienced moral injury may be even more like aware of that
mhm,
risk and maybe taking additional steps to prevent that from happening again, which is
mhm,
great. I agree. I'm trying to be very clear with myself and clients that I'm not the expert of their lives, that I am here in a contracted business agreement, that I can be wrong, that I can, that they are the ultimate person who's in authority of stuff. And I try to check in with them a lot throughout the process of like, how is this going for you? What do you think? And I always hold it very loosely what we're doing. I never try to come off as like, I know what to tell you, like I do it this way, blah,
yeah,
blah.
yeah. I say correct me if I'm wrong a million times, and I mean it.
Yeah.
Actually, do correct me. So, yeah.
Yes. And there's like good evidence that counselors with high confidence are worse counselors than counselors with low
Oh yeah,
evidence, with low
yeah.
confidence.
Like that diagram, like you're on the peak of Mount
Yes.
Stupid, basically, because of your confidence.
Yes.
Then Valley of Despair. Have to
Yeah.
look at what that's called.
Okay, but here's one area that I think that it does pop up.
Hmm.
This moral injury, maybe I get this wrong situation, which is confidence about theory of mind or how people heal or what types of therapy modalities are the quote best
Hmm.
types.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So I asked you earlier, but I'm asking you again, have you or anyone in our listening audience ever heard of the Dodo
No,
effect? Okay. Have you heard of common
I
factors?
don't think so.
Okay, I immediately feel so much better because I've been doing all this research and I was like, why am I the last to know any of
That's how I
this?
felt
And I
about
always,
spiral dynamics. Like,
well, that's a little bit out there, but common factors is I think they're teaching it in graduate programs, but I don't know. And so when I don't know something, I just think, well, it's because I had a crappy graduate
okay.
program. But you've never heard
I
of
don't
that?
think so. Or like, what is it?
In therapy, the dodo effect comes from the story in Alice in Wonderland, where the dodo declares after a nonsensical race, everybody has won, all must have
Okay.
prizes. And it's a metaphor for all of this research that has been done and study after study where people have compared one therapy modality to another therapy modality. And over and over and over again, there's no statistically significant difference in the therapy modality for the client outcome.
Hmm.
Am I blowing your
Is this
mind?
where it's like the therapeutic alliance is the most important instrument for change comes in?
Well, that's the second part of the research is that common factors across all therapy modalities, like the therapeutic
Hmm.
alliance, come out as a bigger, like 30 to 40% of variance is common factors, and techniques or therapy model is only 15 to 30%
Okay.
variance. And I've heard it be lower than that. I've heard it be 2 to 5, but I don't know if that's
Hmm.
true.
Well, so I'm kind of pushing back against that in my mind because there's certain therapy modalities that aren't recommended for certain diagnoses. So was this outlined with like clients with similar presenting concerns?
Well, I researched a little bit. We could like elaborate on this later, but here's um, an example. The most recent high quality meta analysis, 2021 to 2024, compared EMDR with other trauma treatments. So the patients, um, they were looking at the PTSD symptom severity
Oh,
scale. So that must have been the like precursor treatment like goal would be something related to PTSD. Um, and there was no significant differences with PTSD compared to trauma-focused CBT, CPT, and PE. I don't know what those other two are.
Okay.
And then this next one in 2023 compared 157 people, trauma-focused CBT, EMDR, and then it just says other trauma-focused and non-trauma-focused interventions. All active treatment, all active treatments had were effective. So all the treatments were effective. Like all the clients got
Hmm.
better. No significant efficacy differences between EMDR and all other trauma-focused therapies.
Okay.
Is that blowing your mind? They don't really like pitch that to you in EMDR training number
No,
one.
no, they don't. But okay, so all the clients did have the same presenting concern or like the same, you know, ratings or whatever on a PTSD scale. Um,
We would have to research the studies and see who's tried to poke holes in them and see like, did they not control some of the variables? But like, because I've been trying to research lately, like, why isn't, I understand how complex that would be to study, but we should be able to try with some sense of like scientific rigor, finding clients with similar presenting problems and then comparing the two modalities. It
yeah.
has to be possible.
What makes, I think, research so difficult in the area of psychology is that it's all like subjective units of distress or like clients self-report, like they're doing a pre-test and a post-test basically, and it's like the client kind of, on a Likert scale, 1 to 7, how bad is it? Like, you have some people that they don't give anything in the world a 1 or a 7. You know, you have
Yeah.
other people that it's either 7 or 1. You know, and so I don't know. I feel like research is hard. Like you end up getting um, narrative types of data instead of like quantitative that you can actually measure. Um,
What if they were measuring like,
Nightmares.
yeah, like what if, I don't know, like what if the studies were measuring some more, if you were satisfied with the thoroughness which they were measuring response to treatment and it wasn't just like some silly scale that would could have been subjective, like would you feel more comfortable? Because that's the research I want to look into is I want to know how people are actually studying this because I'm super curious about how it's being
Yeah,
done.
like for example, if you're using an exposure type of therapy for PTSD, like are you could hook the person up to like an EKG thing or like, some sort of brain monitor or whatever, and you could measure numerically how worked up they're getting, activation. So, yeah,
You
if
could.
they're talking about the story numerous times, which you would typically see in like trauma focused exposure therapy, are those numbers
Hmm.
going down? Yeah.
Yeah.
I personally slash professionally don't prefer to use exposure therapy on trauma, and I don't use like trauma therapy like EMDR on OCD. I kind of separate those out because of like different efficacy recommendations that I've seen. But I mean, if you're taking like biofeedback data, you could definitely quantify it. So maybe they're doing that. Like you can't do everything on a Likert scale though, of like, the client's
Yeah.
report of how bad it is or, how worked up do you feel now? I think that's
Yeah.
okay in practice, like as a guide, or, like do we need to keep working on this or something? But like for research sake, I don't think it would hold up like a peer review type of deal.
I think that it's interesting to know how people are answering that questions because it's like I'm not the first one to want to know that, and there are other people who've been working on getting those kinds of scales
Hmm.
too. It's just cool in a zoomed out industry
Yeah.
question to know that that's something people are studying. So I was reading all these Dodo effects or whatever, but then I asked ChatGPT, what about the difference in a manualized trained therapist in any model versus someone who simply graduates from school and uses the coursework and the experience they got in school? How does that make a difference? And according to ChatGPT, um, there's a huge difference in um, having greater than 5 years of postgraduate experience, ongoing supervision, an evidence model, evidence-based model training produced a 30 to 40% greater symptom reduction in clients versus new graduates using generic integrative
Makes
approaches.
sense. That makes sense.
So that's an ad. So it's funny because it like at one point I would think if you were just going to take this off the top, it would be like, what's the point
Hmm.
then of all these MLM like huge therapy training model organizations that are expensive and time consuming? But the theory then is like they do
Hmm.
help. Maybe it doesn't exactly matter which one you choose, but the extended postgraduate
Yeah.
training is
Yeah.
helpful.
Like
And that made me feel better.
right when you get out of school or when you're still in school as an intern, you are just being comfortable being in the room with someone who is
Yeah.
experiencing emotion. We're not taught how to do that in
Yes.
life, you know? Or a lot
Yes.
of people find it surprising that empathy is a technique or a skill that is like actively taught to people in a graduate program. Like there's a
Yeah.
formula to be empathic, and there's a
Yeah.
formula to communicate empathy. So a lot of people are surprised to hear it. Like, yeah, it took like a semester of us practicing how to respond with empathy. Like, shouldn't you already be able to do that? Like, shouldn't you already have the gift of that if you like went into this helping profession? No, like, no, empathy is a
Yeah.
skill to be learned. But yeah, I'm not surprised about it. Just in my own experience, like I notice myself being a lot more clinically focused nowadays. Whereas, like, in the past, I'm like, oh, like, this client came in to kind of like hang out and like to talk about what their issue is right now or whatever. But like nowadays, I'm like, all right, what are we getting into today? Like, this is what happened last time, picking up from there, boom, boom, boom. I'm more like, let's get to the work, because I'm confident
Yeah.
in those specific modalities and the skills. I know what's next. I have a
Yeah.
plan up my sleeve. Whereas when I was an intern, just like trying to be just trying to be comfortable with people coming in the room, I was kind of like, just see
Hmm.
what they want, just see what they want. That in that mentality,
Yeah.
it got me through those first years of learning
Yeah.
to be the person that I am today. But well, I think that's a really natural stage of development for a therapist or for any professional. Like yeah,
Yeah.
you have to start somewhere. But yeah, regarding symptom reduction, like yeah, that makes sense for someone who's like trained in like a legit protocol where it's productive, it's predictable, you can see what's coming, and the clients can see what's coming too. So, yeah.
Yeah. And so then it becomes like the common factors of doing any
Mhm.
training.
Mhm.
Like doing extended training
Yeah.
becomes like the thing versus you sort of deprioritize like you deprioritize. Here's how moral injury to me I think can be a little bit like comforted, or you can like help yourself as a therapist when you're worried about creating a harm with the clients or like getting it wrong by doing the wrong theory, is to look at the common factors of these different theories and to know like some of them are going to do a little better on one thing or another, but based on like what I'm seeing in the research, it's good to do extended training. It doesn't necessarily like matter exactly which training you're doing as long as it's evidence based and not what were we talking about earlier?
Rebirthing.
Rebirthing.
Yes.
Right. Like pick a training that has peer reviewed, like some sort of credentials and is
And
safe, right? But like there's a lot to choose from in the world of therapy that are
and
safe.
choose something that
So it helps
oh
me with,
sorry. I was going to say that hasn't been outlawed in a number of states.
yeah. But this has been my fear as a learning therapist is that I'm afraid a theory is going to make me be overly confident and then cause harm because the theory gets it wrong and then I teach the client the theory. Or like let's use EMDR for an example, but I think about this with IFS a lot. But like what if EMDR is not helpful or what if it's harmful? And then it's like now I've been confident and I've tried to help someone with something that was hurtful. But then I take a step back and I'm looking at the data and I'm like, maybe there's not one theory that's like shining as like the one way to do therapy. And maybe that's okay because what we know is that extended training is
Yeah.
helpful. It helps me feel
Yeah.
better, is what I'm saying.
Well, the therapy in itself or the modality isn't happening in a vacuum. Like there are other factors that you need to take into account, whether while you're deciding if we should proceed or not. And like so much of therapy is a collaborative process. So sometimes
Yeah.
it takes a while for your client to actually voice their consent of like yes or no, we should or shouldn't move forward or something like that. And like there's tons of stuff like that that's like the groundwork for these modalities and stuff. Like you don't I mean, if someone has like a spider phobia, they're not going to come to my office and I'm
Yeah.
going to like throw a spider on them, like
Right.
there's a ton of
Yeah.
prep work that goes into therapy in general. So,
I think that's helpful to remember. And I think part of recovering from some like moral injury too is the belief that like can launch in really quickly, like I'm gonna hurt someone all over again, or like I'm gonna repeat history, or it's exactly the same it is as it is before. Like when your nervous system was coming at the beginning where you're like
mm,
flushing. But then the truth I think is that it's all happening in a lot more gray than that and a lot more slowly than that. And like I we have thoughtful ways of this unfolding in our client to therapist scenarios where we're not throwing spiders at people, we're not evangelizing
mhm,
people, we're like in a very complex, guardrailed
yeah.
relationship with them. It is
Or
different.
so much of therapy, like DBT specifically, is values exploration, where you're helping the client define their own values. And, like, yeah, they're probably going to be different than mine. It's not a bad thing. But
Yeah.
where moral injury happens is like under this assumption that we all have to be aligned or like in the same synchrony or something like that. But
Hmm.
being a therapist is kind of the opposite. It's like, I put my values to the side to give someone this whole list of them and for them to explore and try on what feels right because like this time is for them. It's not for us
Yeah.
and it's not for me and it's not for the larger church or anything like that. It's for them to decide like how their behaviors can be congruent with who they are. So it's like quite a shift when you
Yeah.
separate yourself out.
That's a very postmodern approach.
I love the critical thinking. Yep.
I love the peace signs with the postmodern approach for the win. We've done it the other way, don't recommend.
No.
And by that I mean telling people what is true and right and making sure they do it your way.
Yes. Yeah. No, thank you.
It doesn't end
Okay.
well.
I agree. So what's the dodo
All
bird say?
right.
We all win half of the prizes? Or what? Okay.
Yes. Everyone gets a prize, which is my favorite mantra in life, and my kids hate it because they're aggressive soccer
Okay.
players.
Well,
All theories get a
all right.
prize. Just don't throw spiders at
Yeah.
people.
No, I don't think all theories get a prize, but maybe that's a conversation for another day.
Okay, how can we say it better? Everything's a little bit grayer than it seems.
Okay. Very postmodern again.
Postmodernism for the
Yep.
win. Carry on. We don't even know what we're
All
talking
right.
about.
Have a good day.
Bye, everyone.